guys, welcome back to episode 2 of our Two Lukes podcast, where we're going to bring a fun group of topics again this week. Starting, we talked about on the first episode, we were getting ready to head to a wrestling show. We did do that, and I've got to know just your thoughts in general, Luke, on what you thought of the show and best, worst moments.
I love my wife and I love my son, but this may have been the greatest night of my life. I've been lucky to have been in attendance for quite a few big moments in wrestling, and this blew them all out of the water. Obviously, I don't think it's a spoiler alert, CM Punk did come back in Chicago. Huge deal. Greatest wrestling moment I've been a part of. One of the greatest moments, period, I've been a part of. Once again, I got married, I had a son, sure, out there. But it's almost hard to even put into words for somebody that wasn't there. Even watching the videos back, I get goosebumps.
Yeah,
of just how special it was.
Yeah, so a little bit of background if you're unfamiliar, you didn't listen to the first one. We went to Chicago to AEW Rampage, where Tony Khan said in an interview yesterday, he wanted the people to be 99% sure that CM Punk would be there and leave that 1% of doubt that kind of made it so special. And sold out the United Center essentially for what they had set up. I think over 15,000 fans, the biggest show in AEW history, and just spectacular. So they taped 2 hours, 2+ hours of dark, and then Rampage opened up with 15, 20 minutes of Punk. So yeah, pretty cool moment. I know, I had videoed the very beginning of it, maybe put on Twitter, liked, retweeted a million things on the Opinions Anonymous, just everything that you could go through. But yeah, really wild night. I think I love, this was only the second wrestling event I have gone to. I think I told you that I went to a SmackDown in the heyday where, Edge, still Rey Mysterio, still Kurt Angle, Jericho were all in the heyday of SmackDown. Ended with a steel cage match, was pretty cool. But this was a new experience for me because I hadn't done this in so long, and get to see AEW for the first time, which is really cool. Got to see a ton of people on the dark taping. I mean, there were probably 15 matches?
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot.
There were a lot. So got to see a lot of really cool people and be a part of something really, really special.
And kind of on that point, I did want to say, I've been to a WrestleMania, a Royal Rumble, a Survivor Series. Like I've been to those big events, so I don't want to compare this to those because they're different experiences. Yeah. But as far as going to a Friday Night SmackDown or a Monday Night Raw, I think that's what stood out to me the most. When you go to SmackDown or Raw, you'll have a couple of matches off camera, and then it's the main show, which obviously they don't get everybody on. And that's one of the things that really stood out for me in AEW. If you had a favorite, there's like a 95% chance that you saw them in a match. It may have only been a 3-minute match, but you still got to see who you came for. Whether their opponent mattered or not, but
we tried to come up with the amount, and there were probably 10 or 12 wrestlers on a roster of 70 that weren't there. I mean, there were a lot of people that you got to see, very few that weren't there.
Yeah, and the fact that I struggled to come up with names. Obviously, I'm not as familiar with the roster as you are, but that just goes to show. I think that just goes back to how much they care about the fans. They want you to see your favorites if you're paying for a ticket to go.
And kind of fun to see all the behind the scenes, Justin Roberts counting in the matches or counting in from commercials. So great experience for me. I enjoyed it tremendously.
I wouldn't hesitate to go back to an AEW show. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it's one of 2 AEW shows that I will not delete from my DVR now. AEW Rampage when CM Punk debuted, and then the Brody Lee tribute show are 2 that I go through and watch the rest of them, delete them all, and keep those because they're kind of those special shows that you want to remember forever.
Absolutely.
So enough about wrestling for this week. Obviously, that'll be an ongoing topic for us, but wanted to get into movies a little bit. We watched not necessarily a movie, but a documentary, Malice in the Palace, which is one of the Untolds on Netflix, and thought maybe get your view on what you thought of the Malice.
I didn't have high expectations going into this. I've never been a huge documentary person, but first off, my first takeaway from it was, holy crap, I forgot how good Jermaine O'Neal was.
Yeah.
Like, they really play him up as the superstar. Like, Reggie Miller was just the sidekick.
Right.
And so I love that. And to see it from their perspective, as opposed to what the media portrayed. Yes, it was still horrible, and you'd like to think they wouldn't have done it, but they were victims in a lot of this.
Yeah.
And the courts even agreed with them.
Yeah.
In doing so. I mean, but for what was this, 2004?
Yes.
So 17 years, we've looked at these as just horrible people, essentially, when there's more to it than that.
Yeah. I think I took away that I dislike Ron Artest. Steven Jackson is a psycho, and Jermaine O'Neal really, like, you feel bad for him, and it essentially ruined a career that was on an upward trajectory that he could have, sky was the limit. So, you really feel bad for him. But I found the documentary interesting because it was pretty much all about the Pacers, very little about the Pistons, which I thought was a little weird with Rasheed going in there, Ben Wallace. They had some huge personalities. And it's something that you remember, but at the time, you don't think much of. And just the deep dive into it was, I thought, really well done.
It also made me think of, everybody talks about, oh, today's NBA is so different.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, oh, it's just, people are getting older and more mature. The rivalry, the atmosphere, I don't know that any NBA rivalry is even a tenth of what that game felt like.
Yeah.
And that was just a regular season game going into it. And just the physicality and everything, I was almost shocked to see that. And even the crowd, how into it they were. I've been to a few NBA games, and to me, they're not that exciting. Because I feel like the crowds are fairly dead. Most of the sounds piped in.
You're looking for a dunk, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me was when they showed the finals the year before, the final score was like 63-67. And I was like, what? And I know that was a lower scoring game. But this is back when you'd score 80 points a game. Yeah. Is probably your average, not 120.
Yeah. Triple digits meant, holy cow, that was amazing. Now, if you don't hit triple digits, you probably don't win the game.
Yeah, I would say definitely not. But that stuck out to me, that it was a 60-60 game. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I thought a well done documentary, and we've struggled to get to the same movie. So the first movie we watch is a documentary. But we'll come back to movies. The other movie thing that I was thinking about was just renting movies, and I can't remember how we started talking about it, honestly.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah,
but I know it came up.
Renting movies was one of my. I think it came up because everything's streaming today, and no matter what movie, if you want to watch a movie, you can find it.
Yeah.
You might have to do a tiny bit of research, but there's apps that tell you where you can watch it, or you can buy anything digitally on Amazon, or so if you want to watch a movie, you could rent it. Back in the day, I feel like we're really old saying that, you would have to go to a movie store and scour the shelves. And at the beginning of that era was way different than in the end, when they would alphabetize and kind of had it nicely set up at Hollywood Video or Blockbuster here in town. But I loved renting movies.
We would go every week. I think every Friday night we were at Blockbuster or Hollywood Video looking for new movies.
So growing up, I would rent every wrestling VHS, WCW, and these were from like the 90s. I always remember, I'm not gonna remember what it's called now, the Chamber of Horrors maybe in WCW. It's like 90 or 92 where it was like Sting, Ron Simmons, Cactus Jack, and they did like the Abdullah the
Is
Butcher.
that the electric chair?
Yes, yeah, where they electrocuted Abdullah.
I think I might have had one of those matches on a Halloween Havoc
Yeah,
DVD or
yeah,
something,
yeah.
or VHS, I'm sorry.
But we would rent those Survivor Series. You mentioned going to a Survivor Series. The old school Survivor Series, not when it's Raw versus SmackDown, but when you just had 5 guys here for four or 5 guys, and they just fought each other elimination, and that was every card on every match on the card. I loved it. I would rent Survivor Series '94, and I just love that. And then eventually movies, but I just even when I lived in Shelbyville and what Family Video was still open, I'd go there and rent movies.
It's one of those weird things that, like, I almost remember the smell of even walking in there, but you think of like a shelf at Walmart, they have them split into 4-foot sections.
Yeah.
So you'd have some places that are older movies where you'd have 20 or 30 movies in that 4-foot section, or a new release, they'd have 3 or 4 of those sections just of that one movie.
Yeah.
And it's almost weird to think about that was a store back then, but it was, and it was the greatest place you could go because you could find literally anything.
Yeah.
I don't think I was on the wrestling bandwagon as far as renting VHSs though, because most of what we rented was for the family to watch. Maybe my mom just corralled me away from the wrestling section because she knew that's all I would get, but yeah, I never actually rented those, unfortunately.
I think before Blockbuster and Hollywood came in town, you would rent them from the most random places too. Like we would go into American Rental to rent a movie, not to rent, you know, what you think of people going in there for, but they had movies. Pizza place in Batesville, I can't remember what it's called, that rented movies. I think maybe. But they rented movies, so you could go there, and we would honestly go there and rent movies. We'd rarely get a pizza just because our family never went out to eat. But just the places you would go, and if you went one place and they didn't have the movie, you could try another one, and maybe they do, because this wasn't at the age of having 100 copies or something of the movie.
Even growing up in St. Paul, I remember there was a place that just rented movies. That's all it was, and
gas stations.
I feel like it was just a tiny building, dark, but it was just full of movies and even video games that you could rent. And we went there constantly. And I don't remember when it went out or what happened, but I think it was more once the Blockbusters and Hollywood videos started coming in. A place like that couldn't keep up. But we were there at least once a week because I feel like that's almost all we did when I was younger was rent movies.
Yeah. And when the movie places in town did go out of business, I remember going in and just buying a bunch of your favorites that were super cheap that then you could keep forever. I probably still have some with the stickers on it of like Hollywood Video.
Yeah, especially I think for video games, that was big for me is they only had a small selection of video games. It wasn't like the movie section. It was a little more, let's not edit this, let me find words. It was just video games maybe weren't as popular back then, I'm not sure, but the selection was so much smaller. So when they get in new games, they just sell off the old ones that were used and you could get them extremely cheap. So I would just go in and, oh, I've never played that before, $2, sure.
Yeah. I mean, this is as good a transition as any to renting video games, because this is back in the day where in the heyday of me renting video games, they were $40 new, I think, which to a kid is a lot of money, but you could rent it for a week for like $5. So I would rent a game to see if I liked it. Like if it was a game where I was like, I really want, or if you play the shit out of a Twisted Metal, you could beat it in 5 days.
Absolutely.
And then you just return it. So renting movies turned into renting video games when you got the console. And I think you're exactly right. The selection was different than you would normally see, or when you go to Walmart or whatever to buy them, it was way different. But yeah, I think I enjoyed it. I'm trying to remember some other ones that I rented that I have specific memories of, but it was kind of the random.
I'm trying to think like maybe Cool Borders. There was some
Yeah.
like snowboarding game that I remember renting. There was a Rugrats game I know that I rented. It wasn't like the major
No,
games that you would
because you would buy
expect.
those kind
Yeah.
of, you know.
Yeah.
How about this? Do you remember the PlayStation magazines?
Yes,
And you would get it and they would come with a demo disc?
yes.
I had so many demo discs, and this is another great thing. So I had a demo disc that had NBA on it, and you could only play a quarter, and I would just play it 4 times and pretend that that was a game, and I would like write down the scores on it. Demo discs, man, that was.
Yeah, I didn't have very many because all those magazines, I didn't subscribe to any of them. What I did was when we go to Walmart, I would tell my mom I'm either gonna be in the video games or I'm gonna be
Yeah.
in the magazines, because back then, every store, I think Target still does a little bit, but they'd have demos up that you could play. Walmart,
Yes.
Walmart always had demos of every console. So I'd go back there and I'd play those. If somebody was on them or busy, I would go to the magazines and I'd read through the video game magazines, because you didn't have the internet and Google and YouTube back then. You got your video game information from those magazines.
Yeah, I almost could never play the demos because somebody was always on them, but you would just like almost stand a little further back and watch them play. And be like, oh, this is so cool. But yeah, I for some reason got a lot of PlayStation magazines because it might have been for the demo disc, because and some of those demo discs were legit. Like they would have a lot of games on there to try. Man, it's gonna throw me down a whole I need to go find some old demo discs now, because you would buy the book. You know, what about walkthrough books?
Oh, I had quite a few of those, because once again, you couldn't just Google things.
Yeah.
Or at least it wasn't as widely available back then, so you would pay $20 for those official guides to
Yeah.
get you through a game. Without one of, like, my favorite game of all time is Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda. And I would have never beaten the Water Temple if actually my sister borrowed the walkthrough guide from one of her friends.
Yeah.
So that we could beat it, because it was almost, if you couldn't figure out something, there was no way to figure it out.
I remember having to buy it for Metal Gear Solid because I couldn't get past a couple parts, and you would buy it, and it was cool to have too. I mean, the PlayStation magazines too, they would preview games coming out, and you'd have a 1-pager on, 15 new games that were coming out, and you'd be like, oh, that one sounds really cool. Maybe I'll buy it or rent it.
Yeah, I was even actually thinking, before we even had any of these conversations, that one game coming up soon is a new Pokemon game, obviously one of my favorites. But they release these videos every couple of months, and they're like, here's the information, here's hyping it up. And you get so much information. But back in the day, I would literally, every month that a new magazine would come out, I'd be checking it, because that's where you got the information back then. You didn't know, oh, this game's being made for 3 years from now. Like 3 months before release, they'd be like, hey, this game's getting ready to come out. Here's bare bones information regarding it. Have fun. And there's almost a part of me that wishes some games were more like that, because especially with Pokemon, most of the game before it comes out. There aren't any surprises. Whereas back then, you knew the bare minimum, and you went in, and maybe that's also just being a kid and wanting to go and explore, but maybe the internet's too powerful.
Well, you can almost, every game that's coming out, some YouTuber has gotten an early release, and you can see gameplay before it's even available to the public. Or even as far as games for Madden, before it even comes out, people will be like, look at these glitches they're trying to fix last minute on Madden. So the internet has changed, well, everything, but definitely the surprise of gaming. And you know what? I will very rarely watch a gameplay anymore. I like watching trailers, movie trailers, video game trailers. So I'll do that a little bit, but I don't want to be spoiled. I still want that element of surprise when I play a new game.
Yeah, if it's a game I plan to play, I won't watch anything of it.
Right.
If it's a game I've already played, I've got some YouTubers I enjoy
Sure.
watching. I'll throw it on in the background, but that's more for their commentary
Yeah.
than the actual gameplay. I don't want to watch something and then experience it for myself, because that takes away all the magic
Right.
that games basically hold.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are actually doing a little something with games that, you guys could follow along if you want, or at least look forward to.
Yeah, kind of tying this back into how we started with the streaming and the Netflix. There's actually Xbox Game Pass, which you don't have to have an Xbox to have. We found out you can just do it on your PC, but it is essentially Netflix for video games. They have over 400 different options you can choose from, and the subscription's $9.99 a month, so the same as any of those movie
Netflix,
streaming
HBO.
devices things would be. But we both feel like video games is a part of our life where we would love to experience more than we currently do.
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity for us to dig in for very reasonable price, play some games that we never would have played if we had to pay for them full price, and honestly just have some fun.
Yeah. So each week we will be, it's great because this is one of my favorite things, but there is a button that says, pick a game for me or something. So each week we are going to press that button. Whatever game comes up, we are going to play that game for a week. We have to play it for a minimum of 1 hour, and maximum however much you want. And then we will discuss it every week. However, the first game was predetermined. We are playing 12 Minutes, which is a game that I stumbled upon that I was going to buy for Steam, and it was like $25. And now we're getting to play it, endlessly, and for $1 for the first month, and have that opportunity. So 12 Minutes, if you do want to play along, we'll be talking about that on the next episode, and then we'll let you know the game that we're going to play every week. But I agree, it's going to be games that we would probably never play, and I think we're hoping to find some hidden gems. We're going to tell how long we played and what we thought of it. We're not doing sports games.
Right, with this random button, there are gonna be some exceptions, not many. It's never gonna be, oh, I don't think I'll like that. Because
Right.
that's kind of the point, is we're gonna try and find things we don't think we would like and we really do enjoy. But something like if it pulls up MLB The Show,
Right.
we all know that that's a great baseball simulation game. There's no need for us to play that. We can do that in our free time. We're looking for the smaller independent, studios making video games, or even the main big AAA blockbuster games that we just don't really get into anymore. Like a lot of the racing games, I don't play racing games. I enjoy them, but I would never buy one for myself. So I mean, it's going to be very limited to what we would veto, but there is a possibility that we do.
Yeah, you talked about independent, small indie games, like Phasmophobia started off as one. I got on that last night. I feel like when we first started playing, there was about 4,000 people playing, and last night there were, I think, 16 or 17,000 people on the US rooms when we were in there. So I think that has grown quite a bit. It's a great game that we all enjoy. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be, the funny thing about this is going to be that we have such different styles of video games. So I'm going to get a taste of what you like, just via random, and vice versa. So yeah, stay tuned. We're pretty excited about that. I think we'll have some good stuff to talk about with that.
Yeah, and like you said, I think we'll try and get out on Twitter maybe in advance, because obviously we'll record these, our recordings come out a little different than we actually release them. So we'll try and get you guys on board if you do want to play along and experience new games with us. Get that information out on Twitter as far as what game we're going to be playing and when. And we'd love to hear some feedback from you guys.
Yeah, we'll put out now that we're going to get ready to do 12 Minutes. And maybe we should give a little background about each game, what we know.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So 12 Minutes is a character, a male character is stuck in a 12-minute loop of a day. So the game starts, and you can find this out from the trailer, I'm not spoiling anything, but the game starts and you walk into the house and your wife's like, oh, hide, and here you come in. happy anniversary. I have some news for you. I'm pregnant. And then you guys are celebrating, and a cop knocks on the door, comes in very forcefully, arrests arrest your wife for the murder of her father. And your goal is to figure out what is going on. And you have 12 minutes. And after the 12-minute, or after, the cop comes in at the 12-minute mark, and then if you've not solved the mystery, you may get beaten up or arrested, and then the game starts over. So it's really interesting, and we won't talk about it anymore, but it's really going to be a fun first game, I think, for us.
Yeah, it's something that on the surface sounds interesting, but if it wasn't for this Game Pass, I don't think I would ever experience. It might be something I'd watch somebody else play and be like, oh, that looked neat, and then move on.
And this one is very simple, point and click. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of dynamic we get with games there too that are much more complex or very simple like this. So stay tuned for that next time. Anything else this week?
I don't believe so. I feel like we packed a lot into that episode.
Jam-packed there. So yeah, look forward to that coming out soon. Thanks for listening. We're going to have a lot of other great topics coming up in the near future. So for other Luke and myself, we'll see you next time.